Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie, and today I wanted to do a little bit of a different sort of a video. Now, I've been thinking about the drought. I mean, who can't think about the drought? It's in the news, it's in social media feeds, it's all over the neighborhood, it's all over the state. You can see it wherever you go. And I've been especially reading the comments on social media, and a lot of them tend towards blaming other people. Sorry, we got Kitty here, cute little kitty. Well, let me start over. Kitty made me lose my train of thought. But there's a lot of people blaming others. They're specifically blaming agriculture, they're blaming the cities, they're blaming parks, they're blaming, the state. And they're saying that they won't conserve unless they see somebody else conserve. Now, I was thinking about it, and I've spent a lot of years studying water shortages. That's just an interest that I have, in conserving water and where our water comes from and how to conserve it the best. And I wanted to think about what helped me understand water shortages and water availability more. And I thought about what helped me understand, our water, specifically the water that comes into our community the most. And it was basically finding out where our water came from. Now today I have a lot of design clients that I'm going to go meet, and there's some in Salt Lake and some in Utah County. I'm going to be driving all over the place anyway, and I thought, why not go look at our watershed. Now the watershed is where our water originates, from the very beginning, where it originates, and follow it down to where it comes into my home. Now, where I get my water really has nothing to do with where everybody else is going to get their water outside of my community. Everybody's water sources are different. So I'm going to challenge you at the end of this video, once you see where my water comes from, to go figure out where your own water comes from and who it serves. That is, I think, step number one in understanding why we need to conserve water. So let's get ready to go on this journey. I don't want to be late for my first appointment. Now let's go. Now, Salt Lake County gets its water sources from several different areas. Some of it comes out of the canyons in the picture, the Big and Little Cottonwood Canyons. Some comes out of the Jordan River. And I figured it would take way too long to go try and trace the water sources through the Cottonwood Canyons. So let's start at the Jordan River. So here we are on another stop where I am trying to find different watersheds for the state of Utah. Sorry it's a little bit noisy, but this park is also home to a runway for model airplanes. They're a lot of fun to watch. But anyway, behind me, you can see the Jordan River, and this is one of the outlets from Utah Lake. Now, the Jordan River is a very important source of irrigation water, and let's look at it and see what the Jordan River looks like. So here we are at my second stop in trying to track where Utah's water comes from, at least northern Utah's water. And we're overlooking Provo. As you can see way in the distance, maybe you can see it, there's Utah Lake. And behind me is where the Provo River used to run wild. There used to be flood events every year until they built the reservoirs and the canals and the riverbeds just to kind of tame it. So anyway, this is where the Provo River is where a lot of northern Utah gets their drinking water and their irrigation water. So let's go up and look more at that. So now here we are on the Provo River Trail right above Deer Creek Reservoir with the dam behind me. And this is where a lot of the water for Utah County and Salt Lake County comes from. Now, as I mentioned before, as I was showing you Provo Valley, or Utah County, the valley above Provo, the Provo River used to just kind of run wild through there. There was a lot of flood events, but they built the Deer Creek Reservoir, and that tamed the Provo River quite a bit. I'll show you a picture up above where they release the water from Deer Creek Reservoir into the Provo River, and that is where we get a lot of our water. So let me show you just some of the beautiful views around here. You can kind of see that the reservoir's level is a little lower than it has been in the past. Now I've got to get you above the fence. And the wind is blowing. But it's a beautiful reservoir. So now let's go show you where Pleasant Grove City, which is where I live, let's show you where we get most of our irrigation water. Now I hope this video isn't too bad. The sound might be a little bit off, but I wanted to show you quickly, this is the back of the mountain that is right behind my home. This is Mount Timpanogos. And as you can see, there's a little bit of snow still on the mountain, and you're wondering, well, why do we still say we have a drought when we still have snow on the mountains when it's almost July? Well, part of the problem and part of the issue is that we have had very little rainfall for the past 2-3 years. We've been in a drought, and the soils in these mountains have been very, very dry. So any snow that lands, any snow that melts is being quickly taken up by the mountains, sucked into their soil, used by the plants. The mountains here provide us a lot, but they've got to sustain themselves first. So whatever excess they have, that gets sucked into the ground, taken down through the rocks. In our valley, in Utah Valley, there are, and especially near Pleasant Grove, there are little ephemeral springs that pop up in the spring with the runoff. There's springs that just happen when there's actually water, and then they dry up. There's also artesian wells and wells in that area, and all of them are fed by any excess snow and runoff that come through these mountains. Some of the runoff goes through the rocks and down out into the valley and fills the underground reservoirs. And some of the runoff goes off over the land and fills reservoirs like Deer Creek. Here we've got our big fencing. Let me zoom out again. And behind the fence on Provo Trail. But some of the runoff comes and fills these our reservoirs. So we really depend on the state of the mountains on how much water we get in the valleys. So let's go look at Pleasant Grove, which is exactly the opposite side of that mountain, and see where we get our water. So now, before I head into Pleasant Grove and show you where our water comes from, I just wanted to show you one of our neighboring towns. And right behind me, we have an irrigation pond for Highland and American Fork. So let me turn you around and show you that irrigation pond, talk a little bit about it, and show you where the water comes from. So right in front of me, this is American Fork Canyon. Sorry about all the traffic noise. It's a busy road. But a lot of the cities, especially in Utah County, have tried to go away from using culinary water for irrigation water because they have water rights from streams that come out of the canyons. Now, secondary water is what we call it. The irrigation water is not treated. It just is taken straight out of the canyons. Sometimes it's filtered, sometimes not so much. And they're put into little ponds like this one. So this is one of 2 irrigation ponds that are close by here. There's one right up behind these buildings. Those buildings are the agency that takes care of the water. But there's another irrigation pond right behind that. So as these dry up, they are refilled by water coming out of creeks out of the canyon. If that creek runs dry and this pond runs dry, then there's no more irrigation water. And this way, we're trying to help save a little bit of the culinary water. So now I'm going to take you and show you where Pleasant Grove gets their water and how they store it. So now I'm in a really gorgeous canyon that is near my home. It's called Grove Creek Canyon. And this is where we get the irrigation water for our city. Now, I don't know if you can see behind me, but I'll show you in a little bit. We have a dry stream bed. Now, most of that water, I think, is being piped through underground pipes to some tanks that I will show you. But this is where we get our irrigation water. Our culinary water comes from underground wells that are fed by springs and runoff, sorry for the wind, springs and runoff that come from the mountains behind us. And let me show you the creek bed and a little bit of this mountain and the views that we get from here. So here's the dry stream bed. You can see that there's no water in it. Now, I don't know if you can hear it, maybe you can, but that's the sound of the water running through pipes into our tanks that we have. There's several throughout the city, and I'll show you one. But just so you can see the views. That's Utah Lake, Utah County, and these are the hills above my home. Right back there, that peak way back in the back, let me see if I can zoom in on it a little bit. We showed you the back of that a little bit earlier in the video. Okay, so here we are with a gorgeous view at a park. We just came out of Grove Creek Canyon, which is right over there. There's Battle Creek Canyon over here. These are the hills behind my house. And this up here is our watershed. So the water that flows out of these hills and down these creeks and canyons are the watershed for Pleasant Grove, Utah. Now, if you look over here, you ask, why are we at a park? Well, we talked about the water tanks that Pleasant Grove uses to store their secondary water. And the grass over this round park is in 10 inches of soil and is sitting on top of a water tank. So this is one of our secondary water tanks, and there are several throughout the city, and I don't think all of them are covered by grass and made into a park. I think this might be the only one. And then as you look beyond there, we see Utah Lake, absolutely gorgeous view of Utah Lake. And Utah Lake is filled by all the creeks and tributaries, streams that come out of the mountains and the rivers. You know, Provo River is the major one. It's a very shallow lake, and then it flows into the Jordan River that we showed you earlier, which flows through to the Great Salt Lake, which is over there somewhere. Of course, we can't see it from here. Now, I did just find out that the Jordan River Water District does not service any agriculture. It's all residential. And Pleasant Grove City, I think, services mostly residential with no agriculture. And the Provo River, with the Deer Creek Reservoir, I'm not sure how much agriculture they service. But anyway, all of this is residential use water. So let's take you to my house and show you how I get the water. Oh, one last thing I forgot to mention. If you notice, this tank is up on the top of a hill, and most of the tanks are higher up above the city, so that they are gravity fed, and there might be some pumping involved. I'm sure there has to be some pumps somewhere. But anyway, most of it's gravity, and let's go to my house and show you where it comes into my house. Well, now we're back at my house, and I figured the best place to end this journey is to show you where the water comes into my house. We've seen where the water originates in the hills above my place, how it's brought out of the canyons, put into the tanks. And one thing I forgot to add is they have pumps that pump the Provo River water that comes from Deer Creek Reservoir over the hills into a long canal, and that canal goes right actually behind my house, and it takes the water to Salt Lake. Let me show you where that canal is. So you can see the cuts in the hill just above my house. Right below those cuts, those are actually bike trails, but just below those cuts is a trail. That trail is over a large pipe that, a high pressure water pipe that takes water to Salt Lake. Now, that used to be an open canal, but probably about 8 years ago, they put in a pipe and covered it up. Now, if Pleasant Grove's Creek runs dry and we don't have water to fill our tanks, which happens quite often because the storms do miss our watershed, but if we don't have water to put in our tanks, we can actually buy water from Orem City. They have a lot of water shares that they sell to. They don't sell the shares, but they sell the water from those shares to other cities who need it. So if we don't have water in our creek, then we do buy shares from Orem and fill our tanks that way. But let me show you where the tanks that are above my house, they're in the hills above the house, gravity fed. Let me show you where it comes into my house. Now we have a couple of different boxes, and we've showed you these in different videos. And under my tree, and I'm starting to think maybe I did a bad thing by putting this tree here because I put it right over my culinary water lines, but that's where the culinary water is piped in. And my irrigation used to be connected here when I had culinary water for irrigation. But the city made us cut that and disconnect our culinary water from the irrigation water. You can see where the street was cut, where they brought in the pipes. And this is where we're connected to the secondary water. Now, as you notice, if the city wants to, they can actually turn off the water and lock it. And they use that as a punishment for people who don't follow water restrictions. So now we've carried you through the complete journey of secondary water, irrigation water, and even the culinary water for my area. So why does that even matter to know where it comes from? The first thing is, I've noticed a lot of comments in social media when we talk about drought, how they're like blaming agriculture, they're blaming the cities, they're blaming the states, they're blaming the Colorado River Basin, they're blaming everybody. But at least in our area, our water supply is very regional. It comes from a specific source special to this city. Our culinary water, our wells that are under the ground, that come from water under the ground, which is under our city. Underground aquifers can be interconnected. We don't know if they really are or not with all the other cities in Utah County, but they're definitely not connected to Salt Lake County. So if we decide as residents that we're not going to conserve water until we get rid of agriculture out of Utah, or until the cities decide to turn off their water and let their lawns die, if we decide those kind of things, then we're basically shooting ourselves in the foot. We need to start water conservation at our own house. And in reality, our spot is the only place that we can control. We can't control the cities. We can vote for legislation. We can petition the cities to do better. We can talk to the Parks and Rec. We can go meet the farmers in our area. We can go talk to people who actually deal in agriculture and find out what's going on. Once we find out what's going on, then we're better equipped to know what we can do to handle things. But until we know all the details and how to change the outside world, we can't do anything about it. But we can change things on our own properties. And the next video, I want to go over a few things that we can do to change our own habits so that we can help conserve water and not be part of the problem. So I know this may stir up some controversy because there's a lot of heated debates when it comes to the drought and water restrictions, but I just wanted to let you know that the first place you need to start is to understand your own water and where it comes from, and I hope this helped. And if you like my videos, I hope you share them with your friends, like and subscribe, and go have a wonderful garden adventure.